My wife secretly sold the family home for $350, $0 behind my back to her boss, and used the money to fund her lavish affair, with our divorce now tainted by a court battle over $500,000 in stolen assets. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy discovering my wife's cheating behind my back, especially not in a way that hits so hard it changes everything. It all started with a gut feeling, something just felt off. Honestly, I'd been noticing little things for months. Jessica, my wife, was acting different, more distant, secretive even. She'd hide her phone, delete texts quickly, and she stopped wanting to have sex as often. At first, I thought maybe it was work stress or just normal life fatigue, but deep down, I knew it was something else. Something I didn't want to admit. Then one day, I decided to check her phone. It wasn't planned. It was a moment of weakness, but I needed to see if my suspicions were right. I grabbed her phone when she wasn't paying attention and unlocked it with her fingerprint. She always left it lying around careless. That's when I saw the message thread. It was from some guy named Mark. The texts were flirty, suggestive, and there were even explicit messages about meeting up. My stomach dropped. My wife was screwing her boss, a guy I'd always thought was just a decent, professional guy. Turns out he was just another scam. The messages weren't just about sex. They were about plans, trips, and hiding it from me. She told me she was working late, going to the gym, or visiting her sister. I found receipts for hotel stays, and she'd even deleted some of the texts after reading them. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. I'd been married to her for 10 years, and I never imagined she'd do something like this. It was like finding out the woman I loved was someone else entirely. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept racing. I looked at her phone again, trying to find more clues. I found pictures she'd sent Mark them in bed, her lying about her whereabouts. I was furious, but I also felt betrayed. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could she betray everything we built together for some guy she barely knew? I was angry, hurt, and confused all at once. I needed to confront her, but I didn't even know where to start. The most shocking thing, she always played the victim, acted like I was paranoid or insecure whenever I brought up my concerns. Now I saw the truth with my own eyes. The next morning, I decided I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I sat her down and showed her the messages. Her reaction was in manipulation. She looked me dead in the eyes and lied, told me I was mistaken, that the messages were innocent, just some work-related banter. She called me paranoid, said I was reading too much into it. That was her go-to move, lying, denying, trying to make me doubt myself. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I knew for sure that Jessica had been cheating on me for months, maybe longer. The betrayal wasn't just about sex. It was about trust, respect, and everything I thought we had. That moment, I realized my world was falling apart. I felt a mix of anger and sadness I didn't even know I could experience. I'd always been the guy who believed in loyalty, in working through problems, but this was different. It was a punch to the chest, a wake-up call. I didn't want to be with someone who lied to my face, who sold our home, our family's home, behind my back to her boss, Mark, just to fund her affair. I was stunned that she'd go so far, especially with someone I'd trusted. It made me question everything, her character, our life together, my own judgment. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what yet. I was angry enough to want revenge, but I also felt a strange sense of grief. I'd lost my wife, my trust, and maybe even my future. I knew this was just the beginning of a long, painful road, but I also knew I couldn't stay silent. That's when I started planning my next move, something I'd never thought I'd have to do in my life. After that confrontation, everything changed. I couldn't look at Jessica the same way. Her eyes, which used to be so full of warmth and love, now held a flicker of defiance, like she was daring me to call her out again. I stayed up all night trying to process what I just learned. The betrayal cut so deep I could feel it physically. I kept asking myself, how did I miss the signs? Was I blind? Or was she just that good at hiding it? The worst part was knowing she had been lying to me for months, maybe longer, and I had no idea. The next day, I started digging deeper. I needed proof, something concrete I could hold in my hands, something that would make it impossible for her to deny the truth. I hired a private investigator. I didn't want to do it, but I knew I needed to be sure. I wanted to catch her in the act if I could. Within a week, the pie came back with footage. Jessica was meeting Mark at a luxury hotel downtown. They were kissing, holding hands, and then going into a room together. I couldn't believe it. I'd seen enough. That was the moment I decided enough was enough. I was done being played for a fool. The confrontation that followed was even more intense. I told Jessica I knew everything, showed her the pictures and the videos. She looked shocked at first, then angry, then defensive. She started throwing out excuses, how it was a mistake, how Mark meant nothing, how she was stressed out, and how I was just paranoid. She called me insecure, said I was overreacting because I didn't understand her needs. She even had the nerve to say she loved me, but that she needed excitement, that I was too boring. The audacity of her lies made me sick. I told her I didn't want to hear her lies anymore. I told her she sold our house, our life together, for a fling with her boss. She just smirked and said it was none of my business. That moment was a turning point. I felt my blood boiling. I realized I'd been a fool for so long, trusting her blindly. I'd given her everything, my love, my home, my future, and she'd thrown it all away for a quick thrill. I couldn't stand the sight of her anymore. The betrayal wasn't just about the affair. It was about the fact that she lied to me, manipulated me, and used our life as a playground for her selfishness. I started thinking about the bigger picture, about the house, the money, the assets. I found out she'd secretly sold our family home behind my back for $350, $0. She sold the place I'd worked so hard to build without telling me and used the money to fund her affair. She told me she was investing in her career, but I later learned she'd been funneling that money into her lavish lifestyle, buying expensive clothes, going on trips, and paying off her lover's bills. She even lied about the sale, claimed she'd kept me in the dark for my own good, that she was protecting me from the stress. Yeah, right, protecting me from the truth, more like. The anger grew inside me, not just at her, but at myself for not seeing it sooner. I kept asking, how could she be so selfish? So manipulative. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut every time I thought about the house, the money, her lies. It was like she'd taken everything I cared about and thrown it away. My trust, my stability, my sense of security, all gone in a matter of months. I was furious, but I also felt devastated. I'd always believed in honesty, loyalty, and doing right by each other. Now, I was faced with the reality that the woman I loved had betrayed every principle we once shared. I decided I needed to take control of the situation. I couldn't let her keep manipulating me or spinning her lies. I contacted a lawyer, started gathering evidence of her financial deception, and prepared for a fight. I knew this wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about the assets, the stolen money, the house. She stolen from me, and I was going to make sure she paid. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything she'd taken. I wanted her to feel the same pain I'd felt, betrayed, humiliated, and broken. That's when I realized I had to plan my revenge carefully. Jessica loved her luxury lifestyle, her power, her control. I decided I'd take that away from her. I had to make her see what it felt like to be completely exposed, vulnerable, and powerless. I wasn't just going to divorce her. I was going to make her regret every lie, every stolen dollar, every moment she thought she could get away with cheating and deception. This was about justice, about reclaiming what was mine, and about making her understand the true cost of her betrayal. Once I had all the evidence in hand, photos, videos, the financial documents showing the sale of our house, and how she'd hidden the money, I felt a strange mix of relief and rage. It was like finally seeing the full picture, and it was clear she'd played me for a fool all along. Selling our family home behind my back for $350, $0. That was the biggest slap in the face. She used that money to fund her affair with Mark, her boss, and I had no idea. She lied about everything, her whereabouts, her reasons, even her feelings. I realized I was dealing with someone who had no boundaries, no loyalty, and no shame. I sat down one night and started drafting my plan. I knew I had to be smart about this. Revenge couldn't be impulsive. Jessica loved her luxury, her power, her control. I had to take those away from her, make her feel vulnerable, expose her for who she really was. My first move was to confront her again, but this time with the full weight of proof. I wanted her to see that I knew everything. I also contacted a lawyer to start the legal process. I wanted her to face the consequences of her actions, not just the affair, but also the theft, the deception, the betrayal. In the meantime, I also decided to cut her off financially. I contacted the bank, froze joint accounts, and made sure she couldn't access any more money. I didn't want her to keep living her lavish lifestyle funded by stolen assets. I wanted her to feel the pinch, the loss of control. She always thought she was so clever, sneaking around, lying, manipulating. Well, now she was about to see what it felt like to be caught, exposed, and stripped of her power. Jessica's reaction to my mounting actions was classic. She started flipping out, crying, begging, and throwing tantrums. She claimed I was overreacting, that I was jealous, that she still loved me, that it was all a mistake. She told me I was ruining everything, that I was just insecure and paranoid. But I wasn't listening anymore. I knew her game. She'd always been good at spinning stories, but I had enough evidence to shut her down. I told her I wanted a divorce, and she scoffed, said I was being unreasonable. That just made me more determined. One night I caught her trying to access a secret bank account she'd hidden. She'd set up multiple aliases, fake addresses, and secret emails to keep her money safe. I found the login details on her laptop. She'd been planning to run away with the rest of the stolen money, or at least hide it even more. That was the moment I realized I had to act fast. I contacted the authorities, told them about the financial fraud, and handed over all my evidence. They started investigating immediately. Jessica's face when she found out I'd gone to the cops was priceless. She looked panicked, like the cat caught in the act. She started accusing me of stalking, of invading her privacy, of trying to ruin her. But I knew better. I'd caught her red-handed, and I was finally taking control of the situation. I wanted her to feel the consequences of her lies, her betrayal. This wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about justice, about making her pay for what she'd done. Meanwhile, I began preparing for the court battle. I hired a good lawyer, someone experienced in divorce and asset recovery. We filed for divorce on the grounds of infidelity and financial misconduct. The legal process was brutal. I had to produce all the evidence, testify, and face her accusations. But I was ready. I wanted her to understand that her actions had real consequences. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything she'd stolen, with the house, or with her freedom to lie and cheat. I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal. Throughout all this, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I had been betrayed, yes, but I also realized I'd been a fool for trusting her so blindly. Jessica had shown her true colors, and I had no choice but to accept that our life together was over. The pain was immense, but I knew I had to move forward. I started focusing on rebuilding my life, on reclaiming what was mine, and on making sure she paid for the damage she'd done. It was a bitter lesson, but one I needed to learn. Trust is fragile, and once broken, it's almost impossible to fix. I was determined to make sure she never did this to anyone else again, and to make her regret every lie, every betrayal, every stolen dollar. The legal process dragged on longer than I expected, but I stayed relentless. Every day, I was gathering more evidence, consulting with my lawyer, and preparing for the fight ahead. Jessica's attempts to spin her story got more desperate. She'd show up at court claiming she was the victim, crying about how stressed she was, how she didn't mean for it to get this far. She said I was controlling, jealous, and paranoid, but I knew better. I had seen the proof with my own eyes, her texts, the hotel receipts, the secret bank accounts. No amount of her crocodile tears could erase that. Meanwhile, her behavior grew more erratic. She started lashing out, accusing me of ruining her life, of trying to destroy her reputation. She even went as far as to claim that I was the one cheating, that I'd been unfaithful all along. That was laughable, considering I had the evidence of her affair right in front of me. I felt a strange mix of anger and pity. She was so caught up in her lies that she couldn't see how deeply she'd screwed herself. Her arrogance had turned into desperation, and I couldn't help but feel a little satisfaction watching her unravel. I also made moves to reclaim our assets. I hired forensic accountants to track every dollar, every transaction, every hidden account. I wanted to ensure I got my fair share of the stolen money. I knew she'd fight me hard, trying to keep the house, the money, everything she'd stolen. But I was prepared. I had the evidence, the legal backing, and a strong resolve. I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting for my dignity, my future, and the truth. Jessica's biggest mistake was underestimating how much I knew. She thought she could lie her way out of everything, that her charm and bitchy attitude could get her through. But I'd seen her true face now, and I wasn't about to let her manipulate her way out of this. I made sure the court saw all the evidence, her secret sale of the house, her affair, the hidden accounts. I wanted her to understand that her actions had consequences, that she couldn't just cheat and steal without paying. Her lawyer tried to downplay everything, claiming I was making a mountain out of a molehill, but I had enough concrete proof to bury that argument. I knew the judge wasn't stupid. When she saw the evidence, her reaction was clear. Jessica was guilty of theft, deception, and infidelity. That was the turning point. I could see the wheels turning in the courtroom, the realization that she was caught, exposed, and about to lose everything. As the court date approached, I felt a strange sense of calm. I knew that I had done everything I could to get justice. I was tired of the lies, the manipulations, and the betrayal. I just wanted it all to be over so I could move on. I was exhausted emotionally, but I also felt stronger than I had in months. The betrayal had shaken me to my core, but I was determined to come out of this with my dignity intact. Jessica's game was up, and I was ready to see her finally face the consequences of her actions. The day of the hearing arrived, and I was nervous but resolute. I presented all my evidence, answered the questions honestly, and watched as her facade cracked. She looked panicked, trying to maintain her composure, but I saw the fear in her eyes. The judge listened carefully, then delivered a ruling that stunned her. The court ordered her to pay restitution for the stolen money, awarded me full custody of the house, and declared her guilty of fraud and infidelity. That moment felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I finally had the truth recognized, and justice was served. In the aftermath, Jessica tried to come back with more lies, more manipulations, but I was done. I knew I'd never trust her again, and I didn't want to. I walked away from that courtroom knowing I'd taken back control of my life. It hurt like hell, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. I'd faced the worst betrayal I could imagine, and I had come out stronger. I realized that sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to find your strength. Jessica's betrayal was a brutal lesson, but it also taught me that I'm capable of surviving even the darkest storms. Now, I just focus on rebuilding, on moving forward, and on never letting someone like her get that close again. After the court ruling, things didn't suddenly go back to normal, but they definitely started moving in a different direction. Jessica, of course, was furious. She tried every trick in the book to appeal, delay, or spin her way out of the consequences. She screamed about how unfair everything was, how I was ruining her life, and even accused me of being the one who sabotaged her. It was almost laughable, her trying to paint herself as the victim after everything she'd done. But I knew better now. I'd seen her true face, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me again. The most surprising part was how she suddenly became even more bitchy and confrontational. She threw tantrums, yelled at me in front of our neighbors, and tried to guilt-trip me into dropping the whole thing. But I had made up my mind. I was done playing her game. She'd taken so much from me, our house, our trust, our marriage, and now she was trying to turn it around on me. I refused to be her punching bag anymore. I knew I had to stand firm, even if it meant facing her wrath. In the weeks that followed, I started focusing on rebuilding my life. I moved out of the house into a rental nearby. I wanted some space from her chaos, some clarity. I also took steps to protect my financial future. I closed joint accounts, set up my own banking, and worked with a financial advisor to get my affairs in order. I knew Jessica would try to come back and manipulate the situation, so I was cautious. I didn't want her to get her claws in any more of my money or assets. What was even more revealing was how she responded to the fallout. Instead of showing remorse or trying to fix things, she doubled down on her bitchy attitude. She started spreading rumors about me, claiming I was an abuser or that I'd been cheating all along. She wanted to turn friends and family against me, but I didn't care. I had the truth on my side, and I knew who she really was. I didn't need her approval anymore. I just wanted peace and to move on. One day, I got a call from her boss, Mark. Turns out, he'd been served with papers for the court case and he was panicked. He tried calling her, but she ignored him. I could hear the desperation in his voice. He knew he'd been caught up in her lies, her manipulations. I told him the truth about everything, the sale of the house, the affair, the stolen money. I made sure he knew I wasn't going to let him get away with his part in all this. That was a small victory, knowing that he was now caught in the web of her lies, just like her. Jessica's reaction to all this was to go into full-blown denial mode. She claimed I was trying to ruin her, that I was just jealous of her success, that she deserved everything she got. She told everyone she was the victim, that I'd been controlling and abusive. She even tried to guilt me into forgiving her, saying she loved me and that she'd change. But I knew better. I'd seen her true colors and I wasn't about to fall for her manipulations again. I learned that people like her don't change. They just find new ways to lie and cheat. I spent the next few months slowly rebuilding my life. I found a new job, started dating again cautiously and focused on my mental health. The pain of betrayal was still there, but I was learning to live with it. I realized that I'd been naive to trust her blindly, but I also knew I had to forgive myself for that. I learned a hard lesson about trust, loyalty, and what it really means to be betrayed by someone you love. Looking back, I see how far I've come. The anger, the heartbreak, the betrayal, they all shaped me into someone stronger. Jessica's actions taught me to be more cautious, more aware, and to never take my trust for granted. I still get angry sometimes thinking about everything she stole from me, our home, our marriage, my sense of security. But I also feel pride. I stood my ground, fought for what was right, and refused to let her destroy me completely. Now, I'm focused on moving forward. I've learned that revenge isn't about sinking to her level, but about reclaiming my power and dignity. I'm not bitter, I'm just wiser. I don't wish her harm, but I do want her to understand that her actions have consequences. And I want anyone reading this to know, trust your instincts, protect your assets, and never let someone manipulate your life. Because when betrayal hits, you have two choices: let it crush you, or use it as fuel to rebuild stronger than ever. Looking back now, I realize that this whole nightmare changed me in ways I never expected. It's not just about the betrayal or the money, though those things hurt deeply. It's about realizing how fragile trust really is. Jessica thought she could get away with everything, that her lies and manipulations would never catch up to her. But I learned that no matter how slick someone is, the truth has a way of surfacing. And when it does, it's not pretty. I've come to accept that some people are just fundamentally selfish. Jessica was one of those people. She wanted her cake, her affair, her lavish lifestyle, and was willing to sell everything, including our home and our marriage, to get it. She lied, cheated, and stole without a second thought. But what she didn't realize was that her actions would eventually blow up in her face. She thought she was invincible, untouchable. Now she's facing the consequences: court orders, financial ruin, and a reputation in shambles. For myself, I've learned to rebuild from the ashes. I've become more cautious, more aware of the red flags I ignored before. I've also learned that forgiveness isn't about excusing what she did. It's about freeing myself from the anger and bitterness that threatened to consume me. I've forgiven her not for her sake, but for my own peace. It's a way of saying, I'm done with you. I refuse to let your betrayal define me anymore. Most importantly, I've realized that I'm stronger than I thought. I survived the shock, the betrayal, the heartbreak, and the legal battles. I stood my ground when everything told me to crumble. I fought for my rights, for my dignity, and for my future. And I won. Not just in court, but in reclaiming my life. The money, the house, the trust, they all belonged to me and I took them back. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to learn, it's this: never ignore your instincts. If something feels off, investigate. Protect your assets, your heart, and your mind. People can be manipulative and some will do anything to get what they want, even if it means destroying everything you care about. But remember, you have the power to fight back. You don't have to be a victim forever. You can rebuild stronger and wiser. Jessica's betrayal was a brutal lesson in trust and resilience. It cost me dearly, but it also taught me to value myself more, to stand up for what's right, to never let anyone take away your dignity without a fight. I may have lost a lot, but I gained something far more valuable, myself. And that's a lesson that will stay with me forever.